Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Happy Saturday morning, happy weekend. I hope everyone is okay. They're looking forward to a good weekend and obviously looking forward to hopefully Spurs returning to winning ways on Sunday afternoon. But that's tomorrow. This is today. Let's talk on Saturday because we're going to be talking about some reports surrounding Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid accelerating their interest in Cristian Romero. We're going to be talking about Fabio Paratici's move to AC Milan actually falling apart. We're also going to be talking about the potential of the new managers that we've been linked to, understanding a bit more about them, understanding a little bit more about their records as well. And I think it's honestly really fascinating when I go through some of the sort of the stats and figures and things like that. I think there's a lot of things that maybe I didn't know. So if you don't know, maybe we can learn together today. Let's sort of see. But anyway, morning to all of you. Happy days. Am I Ange out? You already know the answer, Excel, mate. Let's talk about the reports surrounding Romero and Diego Simeone, Atletico Madrid. So let's have a quick little recap before I tell you the update. So we know that Atletico Madrid this summer are really gearing themselves up for quite a big summer. I think they're sort of looking at the La Liga right now. They're looking at Real Madrid, who have just got brought in Mbappe. They're looking to bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold. They're looking to strengthen at centre back as well, potentially. Obviously, the emergence of Raul Asensio is probably going to help that. Rudiger is still a phenomenal centre back, etc., etc. When you look at Barcelona, weird old financial situation, but you still got to factor in. There's a teenager out there who is phenomenal. Rafinha has turned into a top-class winger. You've still got Lewandowski who's scoring a ton of goals. Dani Olmo, Pedri, Gavi, and that's before you even get to any of the defenders, which there is some quality back there as well. So I think they're sort of looking at it going, we need to have a big summer because there is a potential that we could get left behind by the two big boys in Spain. But a big summer maybe actually brings us even further. So it's no longer the big two always fighting winning trophies. It's now the big three every single year. And I think that's maybe where they're looking at it. Obviously, got the brand, it's not brand new, but they've got the stadium, which gives them obviously a lot when it comes to revenue and things like that, Champions League money. So they're in for a good summer this summer. So when it comes to Romero, and I think Romero is probably going to be their marquee push. And what I mean by that is they really want a centre back. They really, really want a centre back. And also with the centre back side of things, Lenormand is obviously a talented centre back. Jimenez the same, but Romero would be a step above those guys. And I mean, ironically, Clement Lenglet's had a very solid season for Atletico. So there is that. And obviously we know what he is. But a couple of different sources, Mateo Moretto, Edu Borges, saying that Atletico Madrid are starting to accelerate their move for Cristian Romero, who is a priority for Diego Simeone. Simeone loves Romero and first contacts between parties have already begun. Now, look, I think people have sort of said, well, if he doesn't want to give his all for Tottenham between now and the end of the season, you get rid of him, don't play him. And it's like, we don't really have any position of strength when it comes to having a fit player not play because we seem to get injuries every single time. It is what it is on that side of things now. I've kind of just given up with the whole thing. Romero's still a serial winner, when it comes to the Argentina side of things, but that will translate to club situations, and he will look at Frankfurt and he will look at that Europa League and go, I want to win that. I don't, it doesn't matter about him being here next year or the year after or whatever. It's you live in the moment. A move to Atletico Madrid is irrelevant when it comes to this season. He will want to win that. He will. Once the season's out of the way, I think there's a lot of players in this squad who are really going to look at their situation. Players of like quality, I mean. So, Romero is obviously one of those guys. They're going to look at the situation and go, is this the right situation for me now? When we talk about Bentancur, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Basuma, 1 year left on his deal. There's a lot of players in that squad right now that are probably in the summer going to be asking a few questions. Is it time for me to move on? Who's the manager going to be? There's a lot of things that are going to happen this summer, and expect quite a turbulent summer, in my opinion. I think, I wouldn't be sitting here saying, let's go into the summer, especially if we don't get European football next year, which obviously I think for the most part is going to depend on the Europa League success. If we don't have any European football next year, Daniel Levy will try and spend enough to get us back into Europe for sure. All the clubs do when it comes to Europe. Europe is worth so much money. They'll spend enough to get you in there. Man United have done it for a decade. Chelsea have done it. Liverpool have done it. Arsenal have done it. Villa are doing it. Newcastle are trying to do it. Forest are doing it. Every club does it. They try and get into Europe, and they want to become a mainstay in Europe because the revenue is ridiculous, even in the Conference League. I mean, there's talks about Chelsea having financial fair play issues again because they're trying to sell off their women's team for 200 million or something, and it's like, I don't even think some Premier League clubs might be worth that. That's interesting. That might be an inflated number. So with Romero, it will be the same. If they want him, there will be a price. Every player has a price, okay? This idea that it's 57 million is just, if that's the case, let's take it on face value for the first part. If that's the case, Atletico Madrid are getting an absolute steal. We have done terribly in that transfer dealing, and whoever's done the transfer dealing in that situation needs to get the hell out of my club, because if it's beneath 60 million, that is a daylight robbery steal by Atletico. We quoted 150 million to Real Madrid last year. So if it's dropped nearly 100 million, then that's a real problem. Because he's not dropped 100 million pounds in value. He hasn't. Even the people that don't really rate Romero, they know he's not dropped 100 million in value. They know that. And if they do think that, that's more of an agenda. I'm sorry. I would never tell someone how they feel or how they should feel. But a player losing 100 million in the space of a year when he's still got multiple years left in his contract is bonkers. It's bonkers. So he will be worth somewhere in between that, in my opinion. About 80 million, I think, is where the value will be. I think we should be aiming for more. And maybe when it comes to more, that might be in bonuses and add-ons. But I think 80 million is a fair amount for sure. If they think they're getting him for less than 80, then I'd say, all right, Cristian, enjoy being at Spurs next year, because Atletico Madrid clearly don't want you. And if Real Madrid come in and go, we'll give you 80 million, okay. Well, there you go, Atletico Madrid. Fight them to get the player that you truly want. And when it comes to their marquee signing, they always have the money to spend. Julian Alvarez, 75 million for a backup striker at Man City. Just saying. But look, on Romero, it's just an update. I'm not worried about it. Okay, I'm not worried about it. He looked like he cared against Chelsea. I don't know if you saw that. He looked like he gave a damn against Chelsea. Not many players on that pitch did, but he was one of them. I think he still cares. I think he still wants to win. So we'll sort of see how we go when it comes to Kuti. We've still got a long way to go this season. Get through potentially Europa League. There's always potential. I mean, people that tell me we're out already, it's like, okay, so you're a fortune teller. Any chance you can give me an update on the stock market? I'll tell me when to buy. Give me an update on some lottery numbers. We'll go from there. But yeah, let's just see how we get on. We've still got 2 games of the Premier League before we know if we're out of the Europa League or through the Europa League. We've got Southampton tomorrow and we've got Wolves next weekend. So let's just pump the brakes and see. And Aldante makes a phenomenal point. The 2 guys who are massively linked to Atletico in Romero and Bentancur, the 2 players that cared the most at the weekend. The other night. But apparently people think they're going to down tools. They're not down in tools. They give a damn. That's how they're taught in South America. You play football. And you care about when you play football. And I think there's some players in our squad right now that could probably do with going, hey, do you know what? I should probably care about this game. I should show a fight. I should, show a bit of, emotion, Hell, players in the past for Spurs who were pretty lethargic when it came to their attitude showed care. Even in games where maybe it meant more to them than others, but they showed care. Emmanuel Adebayor was one of them. So could do probably a little bit more than that. You know, nice guy Sonny. Maybe show a little bit of a mean streak, Sonny. Maybe something like you know what I mean. So, but look, we digress. We move on because we still got loads to talk about. Fabio Paratici, the deal to Atletico Madrid. Wow, could you imagine if he went there? Bring them all in, you know. But look, back to it. Fabio Paratici's move to AC Milan is apparently off. Now, what that means to Spurs remains to be seen. There is a situation where he could still be involved in some transfer dealings. You know, they might say, "Hey, you know, by the time he gets in, you know, for a summer transfer window to a new club, he probably won't have the summer that he would like with the infrastructure and things like that. You know what Prashi's like, so he might look at it and go, "Actually, I'll stay with Spurs for the summer. Maybe I join somewhere in September." And build towards that January transfer window. Maybe that's what he wants to do because obviously he can return to work, but the summer window pretty much is already open by the time he can join. So maybe he wants a bit of a runway into a new club to run, and he probably doesn't want to deal with Zlatan Ibrahimovic talking every 3 seconds. You know what Zlatan's like. And also AC Milan are going through a turbulent time in terms of they might be moving off some big name players this summer. You know, Teo Hernandez, I keep talking about, but he is, you know, they've had bids received from within the Serie A for him. So they could be in for an interesting one. But, you know, with Paratici, maybe that's what it is. And maybe he stays with Spurs for the summer. Maybe he could be off just after the summer. And, you know, this summer's going to be fascinating. You know, like I said, if we're not in Europe next year, then I tell you what, you're gonna have to be smart in the window. Now you'll be able to raise money through sales. There will be players that you can sell. There'll be players that will fall off the wage budget without even having to do anything. So let's sort of see in that regard. I mean, the irony is when you think about the summer transfer window, the best signing we made was an £8 million signing. He's played central midfield. He's got lovely blonde locks. He was the best signing we've probably made all summer. You know, it's probably the best signing we've made in about 3 windows, actually. The January before that summer and this January. So it's not always about the amount you spend. It's about the player personnel, the profile, the characteristics, you know, the suitability to the style of play that you play. So I think there's no harm in Spurs going, we're actually, you know, we're not signing players for 60 million. We're going to sign a couple of players for like 40 each, maybe a 30. And you know, we're going to get creative with the other ones. We're going to really bring in, you know, even if they went, we're going to bring in, you know, a solid, like younger left back to work with Spence and a doggy. Fine. Okay. Centre back, you need to add a centre back in. And, you know, Vuskovic, it might be him. But if you move off Romero, you need to spend big money on a centre back. You know, I don't want this idea that you go and get another project. You need to get a big name at centre back, which means you have to actually spend on wages. That's the other one there on that side of things. You know, they've got some options. They've got decisions to make. You know, you're going to be probably moving off of Fraser Forster in the summer, I'd expect. Regulon will be gone. Werner will be gone. There's some names that are going to fall off the wage bill there and then. You know, Basuma's probably gone. So you're going to have to be creative. You need to, you know, stock the club with quality still. You know, I mean, you might even say, you know, if Basuma goes, okay, Archie Gray goes into that midfield area. Okay, don't mind that. You know, I don't treat that as a new signing, but I don't mind that. You know, the idea then is to say, right, but you now need to make sure you have adequate defensive options. So that Arch, good old Arch, does never, ever need to play in defense unless it's like last 10 minutes of a game, there's been a sending off, you haven't got any subs, whatever, right? That's fine. We can all be on board with the emergency usage. But it's not been emergency usage. It's just been he has to play because we decided we don't want to bring in defenders, apparently. So right, only took nearly 5 weeks to sign Kevin Danso. That's another poor bit of work in the January transfer window. But yeah, I mean, look at the attack. The attack needs work. You know, midfield, there'll be a bit of a turnaround potentially. So, you know, you have to sort of wait and see on that side of things. Langerman have not proved to be good enough. I really hope Paratici returns. I don't think Paratici's been as good as everyone thinks. I really don't. I think people go, But he signed Kulusevski. He signed Brian Hill. So, not every director of football is going to make fantastic signings. They don't. The one thing you can absolutely hang your hat on and say that Paratici is really crap at his job for one thing. He can't sell players. He can't move off of players. I mean, you think of that squad in the summer, that was the last summer, how inflated that squad was. Johan Lang was having to work overtime just to get players out of the club because Paratici just kept stockpiling because he can't get rid of them. So he just kept stockpiling. And that was the thing. When we first got Paratici, I did a video when we first got Paratici, and I asked my friend who's a Juventus fan. He's Italian. Don't worry. He's not a fake fan. He is Italian. And I said, Fabio Paratici, talk to me about him. He went, mate, you're going to love him for bringing players in. Like, he's really active. He's going to be, he always lines up multiple deals per position that he's working on. And I'm like, oh, that sounds unreal. He went, big problem though. I went, what's that? He went, he can't sell a player. He's so bad at getting players out of the club. Juve had a bloated squad because of him. Spurs had a bloated squad. It is a really recurring theme that he's really poor on moving off of players. So Johan, as much as anyone may dislike or like him, the one thing you can say is he put a bloody good shift in and getting rid of the players that he did. It's not ideal. It wasn't ideal. And, there was some players he probably wasn't able to move off of, Sergio Reguilon being one of them. Is there things that maybe he could have done better? Yeah, he probably could have signed 2 or 3 first teamers. Bergvall was obviously brought into the first team. He's very young. Archie, they wanted to bring in this summer, not last summer. But Brentford obviously sped that process up. So between them, they're perfect because Johan obviously can work on bringing in those really great youngsters. He obviously Solanke was a big name signing, but then you maybe sprinkle in 2 or 3 Paratici signings, solid. And then you go, Johan, but you are selling the players because he can't do that very well. You are actually solid at moving players off. And that's what I would say. Together, they're perfect. But you're not going to get them together properly, Just cut one down the middle, cut the other one down the middle. There you go. Stitch it back up. Solid. Off you go, boys. You've got it nailed down. So, but anyway, moving on. I want to talk about the new managers because this is brilliant because, there's obviously a very fierce debate that if Ange is gone in the summer, and it is if, no one can guarantee me it, no one can give me it. Well, there's not really a guarantee in life anyway, other than death and taxes. If he was to move on in the summer, we've been linked to 3 names in particular. Now, with Paratici not going to AC Milan, that might obviously change up a bit of the mode surrounding, will they go for an Italian manager? Now, obviously, I think Johan's obviously going to have a say in it. Scott Munn, you would think, might have a say in it. And Daniel Levy, which hopefully they go, Daniel, you don't have a say in this because you've done a terrible job at this exact thing. So here you go. Here's a colouring book. Here's some pencils. Go sit in the corner. Leave it to the people that know what they're doing or have a chance of knowing what they're doing. When we think about the 3 that we've been linked to, we think about Marco Silva, Iriola from Bournemouth, and Thomas Frank from Brentford. I did some digging. I did some stats hunting. Uncle Andy did some digging. Can you believe it? I actually did some homework for a video. It's rare. Normally, what you see is me just spouting crap, okay? For once, I'll bring some figures, all right? So I was looking, FootMob, okay? Good little app, good little website. It is really, really solid. I was looking at all 3 of them, okay? So, and what I've done is I've taken away Marco Silva and Thomas Frank's, even though Thomas Frank, I think, had more time in the championship, what I've done is I've taken away their promotion or title winning championship seasons just to track them off. And I've left them with everything else, okay? Because at the end of the day, Iriola didn't really have any time in the championship, so it's not really fair on him, right? So let me start with Iriola, okay? So this is his win percentage, right, from his last 3 clubs. Because the first club he's at was AEK Larnaca. You know what I mean? Like, okay. He had a 37% win percentage at CD Mirandes, which was 1.4 points a game. He had a 41% win percentage at Rayo Vallecano. And at Bournemouth, he's had the exact same 4.1. He's actually averaging 0.1 points less with Bournemouth than he did Vallecano. He's had 79 matches as the Bournemouth manager. He's won 32. He's drawn 17 and lost 30. So pretty even on the losses and wins side of things. Okay, so remember that. What I didn't realise, he played 475 times in 13 years for Bilbao. Fair bloody play to you, mate. Fair bloody play to you. Coming over to Marco. Okay, so Marco has had a bit more of an extensive run as a manager. He was at Estoril between 2012 and 2014. He had a 43% win percentage. He was at Sporting Lisbon between July 2014 and July 2015 with a 2.1%, 60% with 2.1 points a game. Olympiacos for another season, 80% win rate of 2.4. He then had a 36% win rate with Hull City, won 8 and lost 11, withdrawing 3. It was even worse with Watford. He had a 31% win rate of 8 wins, 5 losses in 13 games. At Everton, who obviously sacked him, he had between May 2018 and December 2019, he won 24, lost 25, and drew 11 for a 40% win rate and 1.4 points a game. And without subtracting any stats from Fulham, at present, he's a 46% win rate with Fulham, 1.6 points a game over 176 matches. But, like I said, Uncle Andy's done some research, okay? So what I've done is I've actually subtracted his the championship winning season. I think it was 21-22 for Fulham. I've subtracted it off his stats, all of it, the wins, losses, and draws. Okay, and it's left me in that time with 54 wins in 130 games. Okay, so he's had 176. Championship season is 46 games, 130. Okay, that actually leaves you with a 41.5% win rate. So it's only just above Everton. So he really averages 40% win rate, really, between the 40 and a half, we'll call it, between the two. 40 and a half. I am not thrilled by that. I am not thrilled by that. Okay. I don't want Terzic. Not at all. And again, with Javi, I need to make this point clear, Javi, because people go, he's so good with youngsters. Yeah, he is. But can you also tell me who's the Polish guy standing up front right now? Oh, who's the Brazilian left winger they spent 70 million euros on? It's like, have you seen their squad? Have you seen their wages? Jules Koundé, Araujo, Christensen. They brought in Marcus Alonso on big wages. Ter Stegen's still there. Like I said, Rafinha, De Jong is on crazy money. It's like Xavi is good with youngsters because he sprinkles 1 or 2 in, just 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 on a good day. The rest of the team are star-studded international players. He develops youngsters, but he also required the club to bring in ready-made players on big wages to help them. Whereas we, unfortunately, we don't have the really ready-made big-name players on big money to help those youngsters. We just have youngsters and some all right players, and there's an issue. The Man United in the past, when they've had tons of success bringing through youngsters, it's because the rest of the team was really developing. When you think of Man City right now. I mean, Cole Palmer's phenomenal because he came into Man City when they didn't even really need him to be brilliant. They just needed him to be, suffice, and he was. Phil Foden, player of the season, developed because of the surrounding players in that squad. Rico Lewis, I didn't think was great at the start. He's developing. He looks pretty solid to me. So that's the thing with the youngsters. If you bring them into a squad who is performing well, those youngsters should step up and perform well. Think about this, right? This is a great example. Think of Harry Winks when he came in to the Spurs setup, right? And we were doing pretty well, and he looked pretty good. Bringing Harry Winks this summer at that age where he was when he came in, is he going to be anywhere near as good? No, not even in the ballpark. And that's because the squad right now isn't performing because it hasn't got the players that we had when Harry Winks came in. You think of that when Harry Winks came in, think of all that talent that we had. Compare it to the talent we have now. It's night and day that those guys back then are so much better than the guys that we have now. So there's that. That was on Marco. Let me move over now to Thomas Frank. So right now, just to recap, Iriola's at 41%, Marco Silva's at 41%, right? Now, Brentford, reality wise, Brentford was Thomas Frank's proper big job. He had Brøndby before out in Denmark, but I don't think it's very fair to compare Brøndby with like Sporting Lisbon's, Vallecano's a top five league, So I really look at Thomas Frank and his body of work whilst at Brentford, because he's had 309 games as manager of Brentford. He's been around a long time in English football. He's been in the Championship. He's been in the Premier League. And again, I removed his title winning season or promotion season. I don't exactly know where they finished. I removed those facts and figures, okay? And because of that, in a 309 games right now, he's got a 43% win rate, 1.5 points a game, right? He's won 132, he's lost 109, and he's drawn 68, okay? Without that promotion season, he has 108 wins in 263 matches. That leaves you a 41% win rate. So we really pick and choose every one of these guys off about 41%. Now, okay, would they be better with some of the better players that we may have? Yeah, the squad's better than Bournemouth and it's better than, all these people. Would they really take you to where some Spurs fans see Spurs? Some Spurs fans think we should be easily top four every single year, winning trophies pretty much every year. We aren't. We're seventh on the wage bill in terms of the Premier League. That's where you should be aiming for, really, around about seventh. You might have a good season, you might get fifth. But in reality, if you're going to be seventh in the wage bill, expect to be seventh in the league. Expecting us to be fighting for, titles and cups frequently when you're seventh probably isn't a fair indication of where we should be, right? Now, Thomas Frank is very much well liked by Johan Lang. Johan wanted Thomas Frank at Villa. I think it was in 2022. I think they went with Gerrard in the end. But he very much likes Thomas Frank. Now, I think Bournemouth and Brentford have had really solid seasons. Obviously, they both lost their number nines. Bournemouth, obviously, Solanke, he's with us. Ivan Toney's out in Saudi Arabia. One generated a lot more revenue than the other. Obviously, Solanke got sold for more than Toney. But actually, when you sort of look at, I sort of look at this and I go, really, just pick to what you fancy. Really, I think that's all I can sum it up as. I don't think any one of these three is leaps and bounds ahead of the other. I really don't. There might be a little bit of give or take here and there, but it's not night and day. There's not big gaps between them. I mean, the one I think would be the one that would probably struggle the most is probably Marco Silva. It's not because he's a bad coach. It's actually nothing to do with Marco Silva, the coach. It's actually to do with the fact that we chased out of this club managers who play a similar brand of football to him. It's not, no manager plays the exact same as one another. Okay. Just before, let's get that in early doors, but they can be in the same ballpark. We chased Mourinho, who's a better quality Portuguese manager. We chased out Antonio Conte and we chased out Nuno. Nuno's sitting currently in the top four. He's still in the FA Cup semi-final as well. Fulham went out of the FA Cup in the last round, by the way. They went out to Palace. That was Eze's brilliant game. It was a phenomenal game from Eze. So I don't think he would do very well because I don't think Spurs fans would want to. I don't think Spurs fans would give him enough time. And what I mean by that is because the football's not going to be sexy, it's not going to be great. I think he's going to lose fans really quickly, like really, really quick. Even if he's won a couple of games. Nuno was manager a month in August. He was gone in October. We beat Man City at home, first game of the season, 1-0. He was already losing fans from the first game of the season onwards. So Marco will lose fans straight away. He will. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's his fault as such. But what I would say is there's just there is just a bit of evidence to say he will lose support. When you think of Areola, um, Bournemouth right now. Hang on, let me bring up the Premier League table so I can have this to hand. Premier League table. I think there's a game kicking off. I think Everton Arsenal kicks off in half an hour. Bournemouth right now, they are 10th. They're 3 points ahead of Brentford. So remember that. And they are 1 point behind Fulham. So the three managers we want are 9th, 10th, and 11th, by the way. There's 4 points separating them. There really isn't anything between these guys. It's just hilarious. I mean, hell, Fulham and Brentford have the same goal difference, for goodness sake. So that's kind of where the issue is for me when it comes to Marco Silva. With Iriola, obviously they're sitting in 10th right now. They've dealt with a big injury crisis. No wins in the last 5. They lost 4 of their last 5 as well, actually. I mean, even Spurs have won 1 of their last 5, you know? So I was going to say ange, but I know that's going to wind people up. Brentford and Fulham won 2 of the last 5. So there you go. Much more in form. All of them lost, though, their last time out, including us. We lost our last time out. But Fulham, obviously, Bournemouth have been dealing with a lot of injuries. Okay, you know, I get that, and I've given Ange the benefit of doubt when it came to a lot of our injuries. So in turn, I will give Iriola a bit of a benefit of doubt when it comes to his injuries. It's only fair. Be consistent across the board. The only difference between the two is one's been in Europe playing 3 times in 7 days, 8 days. One's been playing once a week, and he has not as many injuries as we've had this season, but the injury list is quite vast. I think they're probably in the top 3 most injuries or time duration of injured players. I think Spurs are probably sitting quite happily in number 1, if not they're in the top 3, hands down. So that's something you've got to factor in. You know, if you're annoyed with Ange who injures all of our players' hamstrings, just be ready for Iriola and you to target Iriola with the exact same issues. He unfortunately, there is a correlation with the amount that both teams sprint, both teams work in terms of press. You will get injuries. So as long as we're prepared, I get that. I do. But you will have those issues. All right. Luke, sorry. Yeah, I forgot to change the Discord link. Let me bring you one here. There you are, my friend. Join it there. There you go. So there's that. On Thomas Frank, they obviously don't have as many injuries. Obviously, I think one of the big ones with Thomas Frank was obviously Rico Henry. That's why they loaned him Reguilon last season. He was a big injury, but, you know, Tony missed time with suspension. You know, but he has made Brian Mbeumo a really, really good right winger. Johan Visser, no one really hung their hat on the idea of Johan Visser being a really solid attacker. Actually, he is now. You know, they brought in Damsgaard. He's had some creativity and success this year, but they're very compact. They sort of know their jobs, but they've been dealing with some issues this year. They concede a lot of goals as well. I mean, this is the other thing. When you look at, including us, okay, so Fulham conceded 40, Bournemouth 38, Brentford 47, Spurs 44. We've conceded less than Brentford, and we've been playing basically without a centre-back for most of this season. Goals scored, though, they've scored more than Bournemouth. They scored 51, Bournemouth 49, Fulham 44, Spurs 55. So I guess, you know, let's continue the same sort of path. Let's score some goals. Let's concede some goals. Thomas Frank, you are the man. I do like Thomas Frank. I do actually like Thomas Frank. I think he is a good manager. I think when it comes to money spent as well, I don't think he's sort of had the same luxury as, you know, Fulham. They spend good money. You know, they've obviously got Shad Khan, very good owner. When you think about Bournemouth, obviously, I know Bournemouth sold old big Dom Solanke. They're not opposed to spending money as well. I don't think Brentford have had as much dollar to spend. And I think he's worked at times with what he could work with. Obviously, you've got to think Brentford Stadium's not very big. They don't turn over massive money in revenue for that. And I think he works a bit more with some of the sort of cheaper signings that you might sign. And I think maybe that's where Of the three of those, again, it's a bit of a toss-up. I don't think there's any one of them that stands out ahead of the other. I think maybe Thomas Frank would be the one that I might put my hat on just about now. But again, I'm not like cementing that hat on the next manager if it was to be obviously not Ange. We don't know right this second, but it's all hypothetical. I wouldn't, cement my hat on Thomas Frank right now. I'd want to see to the end of the season how these guys do. They are obviously neck and neck with one another. Actually, how many points are Fulham off Conference League? Fulham are 3 points off Conference League with better goal difference. But I mean, they've got a better goal difference than Brighton and Aston Villa. They're 5 points behind sixth, 6 points, 5 points behind fifth. Yeah, 5 points behind sixth. They're 6 points behind fifth. They're 7 points behind fourth. So, hey, they're in touch and distance of that top four. So you never sort of know. But again, it's just let me see at the end of the season. Maybe my opinion might change. I mean, when people, like I said, when people talk about Javi has spent quite a bit of money at Barca. You think of people will go, "Oh, transfer revenue wasn't that high in spend," and it's like, okay. Please tell me what their wage bill is, and we'll go from there. That Barca team spent money under Javi. Their wage bill is extremely high. I think De Jong alone probably has more in wages than we do half of our squad. It's on crazy good money. Lewandowski's on crazy good money as well, So, I mean, we talked about in the summer, Rafinha's on more money than all of our players at the squad. So, I get the Xavi idea. Yes, he's good with youngsters, but you have to also give him a checkbook. And the checkbook has to have the ability to turn over multiple checks. Will we have that? I don't know. And, this is not me saying I would want or wouldn't want Xavi. I'm just speaking to the situation that we'll probably find ourselves in the summer. Obviously, we were linked to Sebastian Hoeneß. He signed a new deal out in Germany. Trying to think of who else we may have been like I said, Simone Inzaghi. With Paratici maybe still kicking around the club, maybe there's a chat there, but it's near. I would say it's near enough impossible to get a Simone Inzaghi. I mean, he's in the Champions League quarterfinals right now with Inter. They've got Bayern in the week. I think they've got Bayern in the week. I mean, he's done as well as Conte has in the Champions League. So there's that, I guess. You could probably put your hat on that. But watching Inter Milan have a stranglehold over the Serie A at the moment. They're in that sort of weird Juventus. You remember Juventus about 10 years ago just had the complete and utter control all over the Serie A. He has that now with Inter Milan. Now, maybe the checkbook isn't as large as it would be maybe at Tottenham, for example. I get that. But Italians are also fiercely loyal to Italian football. I mean, Conte wanted to get back to Italy as quick as he could, and I'm not begrudging him that. By the way, he wanted to get back to Italy. He wanted to get back to Italy. But the whole idea with Inzaghi as well is let's say if you did get an Inzaghi, right? He needs multiple windows. Like he needs multiple years to get the squad to what he would want it because he plays a 3-5-2. So he's not as dependent on wingers. Well, we got wingers in the squad. He's dependent on, three centre backs who can really play out from the back. Hell, I watched Alessandro Bastoni play left mid at the times. They play three centre backs and Bastoni's playing left mid. God, I still wish we signed Bastoni. I still so wish we had signed Bastoni. That one hurts. I think that one's going to hurt for a while. But also, they've got a world-class striker in Lautaro Martinez. Marcus Thuram killing it. They look a mile better team when Thuram is at least in the team, even if Martinez isn't. I watched them last weekend. Who did they play last weekend? Was it Venezia? I can't remember who it was. They won 2-1. Udinese. That was it, Udinese. And, I mean, Arnautovic scored for them up front. So he's working with some pretty interesting level players. But, you think Nico Barella, he'd be our best midfielder. Lautaro Martinez would be our best player. Alessandro Bastoni, even if you went, well, I think he's the same sort of level as our two big centre-backs. Okay, fine. Denzel Dumfries is bloody good. I'd probably say Denzel Dumfries might be the best right-back at Spurs. You think of Jan Sommer, really solid keeper, really, really solid keeper. DeMarco, brilliant sort of left back, left wing back, left mid. Then you bring in the Kalanoglu's and things like that. So their squad's phenomenal. They're a better team than us. I wouldn't be leaving them for us unless I'm getting paid 3 times more. The checkbook they're going to give me to work with is crazy. And, they're saying we want to win things and we're going to give you what you need. He's not going to get those things guaranteed. So why would he? So it's like, that's why I don't see him. Would of all the managers we linked to, would he be the best one? Yeah, probably. But it's not going to happen. So there's that. Xavi had embargo facts he brought through the youth players. Okay. But look, we'll sort of see on the manager side of things. It might be irrelevant. Spurs might win every single game to the end of the season. Everyone's back on the Ange ball train and we can forget about this. But I think it's good to have a bit of a touch base, chat about the manager situation. Where are we at with it? What might happen from this? I think it's really fascinating that all 3 of those managers are 9th, 10th, and 11th in the Premier League right now, by the way. And all of them, if you are, like I did, subtracting their title promotion seasons in the Championship, because the Championship, La Liga, I think La Liga is probably a little bit better than the Championship. I think what we would say is they're all 41%. So that's my point. For me, there's just no one outstanding. There might be for you, and I totally respect your opinion, but for me, there's just nothing between them that I can sit there and say, that's the guy. You know what I mean? So we'll sort of see on it, So everyone you have said to you, they are not good enough, but you support Ange Ball into dominant because of the manager, not because of the spelling pad. I don't know what you're talking about, Dean. Dean, you've been around a while. You think I support Ange Ball? Just shows a level of real attention that you haven't mentioned. I've said I'm not Ange in, I'm not Ange out. I support the team to have success. Just don't put words in my mouth, my friend. Okay, come on, let's be better than that. But yeah, between those 3 guys, it looks like they're the main 3. So let's see how they go to the end of the season. Hell, all 3 of them might not want to come to Spurs. We've got to factor that into the discussion. They might, and money talks when it comes to managers. And we, for one real reason, we have always spent well on managers, hoping that they would then spend less than the transfer market because they're better to work with the players that we have. That's why we spend big on managers. So let's see how these 3 guys do to the end of the season. Hey, Fulham might get in the top 6. They could be in Europa League next year. They could be in the Conference League. Conference League's a shout. They're only a few points behind. And let's say Chelsea win the Conference League. That changes things. Maybe Spurs win the Europa League. That changes things. Let's say who's in the Champions League. Villa win the Champions League. Arsenal win the Champions League. I don't think there's anyone else is there. No, City and Liverpool are both out. One of those 2 win the Champions League. That changes the league dynamic and who gets European football and where. Hence why I'm saying there's a lot of things still to come into play in this January transfer window. But, there's a lot of things happen leading into the summer transfer window, It's bloody sunny outside. Why do I think it's the January transfer window? I'm in England. If it was January, it'd be grey. It'd be cold. It'd be snowing at least. Maybe even raining. Hell, all of it. So we'll sort of see. There's a lot to happen. There's 8 games left of the Premier League. 9 games for some teams, but 8 games really for most. Still got some cup competitions going on. A lot of things can change. So we shall see. Obviously, back tomorrow to do my last-minute thoughts ahead of Tottenham versus Southampton, the 2 o'clock kickoff tomorrow. Please join me tomorrow morning. We'll have a bit of chat about it. And hopefully, Spurs win and we can have a good weekend. That's all I'm asking for. It's a good weekend. You know what I mean? Just something. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me this morning and / afternoon. We are in the afternoon. Please go and enjoy the rest of your mornings, afternoons, evenings, wherever you're in the world. And I'll speak to you all tomorrow to talk even more about Spurs. Take care, everyone. Peace.